Hello. So back for the last of the official reading response vlogs. Um, and this week is all about ethics of researching marginalized, hidden, and rare groups. Some of the readings very expected. Tuskegee, Willowbrook. Um, I was very interested to see the discussion around the reading on some Native American um, cases or case. And anyway, let me go into discussing the specific readings themselves. And because I'm a dork, they are in alphabetical order by author because why not? So that actually means starting with the Tuskegee article, which continues to blow my mind that anyone ever thought this was ethical. And as was noted, it's not even something that was done in back rooms, in private. This was well known official research that for some reason somebody thought that instead of giving people treatment, you could actually tell them you were giving them treatment while you were instead studying them and undertreating them for an infectious disease like syphilis, which undoubtedly was therefore spread and could have been contained, if not, never mind the fact that they also could have been receiving treatment. Um, I'm I get the discussion of how it seemed rational in the context of the times, but I guess I just can't wrap my brain around it. Um, Actually, from there, I think I am going to skip to the Willowbrook case, which is a bit different. As the author who was defending his research noted, the site was not chosen because it was a site full of children who were developmentally delayed, at the time referred to as mentally retarded, but because there was a problem of endemic hepatitis at the site. As a nurse, my initial reaction is, can we listen to old Flo from back in the Crimean War and maybe air the place out a little, keep things clean? We know this is how it spreads. You knew it was infectious, if nothing else, so fix that. That it's a systems problem, and it's an environmental problem. And how would you think that deliberately infecting newcomers was a solution? When I read further, one thing I did not realize is that because hepatitis simply isn't a disease that I've studied in any great detail, that when children from the ages of 3 to 10 contract hepatitis A, it's much less severe, and then they tend to develop a natural immunity. So then deliberately infecting them starts to seem a little more like the chickenpox parties that parents would have, and quite possibly still have in some areas where they're anti-vaccine but do want their children to develop immunity. So it makes a little more sense in that context. I think there's the ethical piece, and there's also the logical piece of why did the focus have to be so narrow on this is what we have to study because we can't do anything about the fact that we are cramming 6,000 kids into a place that was never built to hold this many. Um, that's the problem that needed to be solved first. That said, unlike Tuskegee, it does also seem that there was some actual medical benefit derived. So that's a bit different, and that makes it a little tougher to look at ethically, even as my primary reaction still remains, how could you think this was a good idea? There might have been a way to come to the same conclusions and develop the same information more ethically. So getting back to the order the Harmon article on the tribe that won its fight to limit research of its DNA. This actually is exactly why when I see all these ads for the kits you can get where you do a little cheek swab, send it in, and they're going to send you a computer program or map or something that shows you everybody you're related to based on your DNA. And I cringe. Why would I just randomly mail off my DNA to these people? How do I know what's going to happen to that information down the road? That's what happened to the members of this tribe, that they gave blood samples for one thing, to specifically see if their tribe had the same genetic marker that had been discovered in another tribe as predisposing them to diabetes, and if so, what could they do to then prevent further development of diabetes. And not only did they never get any results from that, but then their information was used for all sorts of other things. It was finally challenged in a specific dissertation defense, and it was after that that they discovered just how many had used that information. So it was interesting to then go on the Health and Human Services website and see that the current recommendations for changes to the common rule do include things about handling of biospecimens and allowing people to have a bit more, first of all, more transparency about how they'll be used, and allowing people to have a bit more control. To me, it would make the most sense if you're planning to retain the samples for potential future use, then you need to spell that out to people and give them a choice. You can use my blood sample, cheek swab, whatever it is, for just this study, or you can retain it and potentially use it for other studies down the road. And if they choose that, then you must actually destroy it. That would seem reasonable. I'm not sure how trusting I would be of that, just human nature being what it is. But that does seem to be the direction that things are actually going, because the whole theme that has come through this week, and not an unfamiliar one, is that our bioethics have not kept up with our technologies and our globalization, and the extent to which we're able to do things across borders that previously would not have been even thinkable. For example, one thing that was referenced, although not discussed in detail, is the trialing of different things for HIV in African nations. Partly, it would seem, to get around requirements in the US, but also because it is endemic in a large area of that continent. So are you just providing something to people who are desperate, or are you actually doing research where it can be used to do the most good? Which brings to the Zion article. Yeah, I said I was going in alphabetical order. I'm not at all. The discussion of ethics of research on vulnerable populations, which interestingly enough is 15 years old, and yet a lot of this is still not really being looked at. I like their proposals for their four criteria to make sure that you're not taking advantage of people who are vulnerable, that the research addresses an actual need of the population you're studying, not just research or curiosity, that it should actually be impacted by medical differences in the that are inherent to the population, and that participants are not participating solely out of desperation to receive some kind of treatment, and that there's ongoing and follow-up analysis of any potential negative impact, which seems very reasonable. I've not seen any of that required anywhere. But the proposed changes do sort of look at some of that. I'd actually like to see more. So much for 1 to 2 minutes. I'm glad that turned out not to be quite so hard and fast, because I'm coming up on 10 minutes. And I will say goodbye, because I too need to upload this sooner. It's going to be late. But I will also say, for anyone who's actually in Philadelphia, I'm going to be on campus tomorrow for the open house. So if you are around, I would love to say hi. And whether or not, happy Thanksgiving to those who celebrate it, and happy week off regardless. Bye.